How can you do all that needs done in life and still pursue your desire to learn French or the guitar or grow a plant or make art? You can't put a fiddle under your pillow and wake up playing it, though how cool would that be? But one thing we can do, no matter how chaotic and overwhelming life can be, is know that every tiny small motion in the direction of those endeavors really do matter. And not only that, they add up over time with great momentum. Join me, Fain, as I interview painters and gardeners, designers and musicians, photographers and cooks, creative livers of any kind who have somehow, in the middle of it all, continued on their creative paths, no matter what. This is Fain House Radio, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, my name is Brownlee, and I'm an oil painter and a mural painter. Also play a little music and write, but yeah, mostly oil painting and murals.
Tell us a little bit about why painting when there are so many things to choose from.
Yeah, that's a question I have asked myself many times, and it's something that I have changed my opinion about over time. Because originally when I went to college, I wanted to be an illustrator and animator, but there was no animation program at my school. I went to Atlanta College of Art. While there, I took an animation internship and discovered that I really didn't like it that much. Yeah, it was a big surprise. I think part of it was the animation they were doing. I remember this was one commercial where they did with a dancing peanut. They said, oh, this is going to air in like 4 TV stations in Indiana. And I was just like, oh, I don't know that I really want to put hours of my life into something that I don't really care about. And at the same time, I was really exposed to fine art for the first time. Then I switched over to painting. By the time I had to declare a major, it was a pretty easy choice to go for painting. But at the same time, I also started getting really into sculpture. So in college, I did a lot of sculpture classes. And it was funny to see that kind of just slip away after I graduated. Like after I graduated, I kept doing painting and the sculpture went away. And there was a while when I wanted to do more sculptural installation or more community-based artwork. I thought it was cooler than painting, basically. I tried to do anything but painting for a long time, but then, I'll go to a museum or a gallery and I see something that just blows me away and just fall in love with the artwork. And I think that's what kept pulling me back to painting until finally I just accepted it. Like, okay, this isn't necessarily what I would choose if I were to choose what I wanted to do, but you can't always choose. Sometimes you just have to do what suits you. And that's really painting for me. Yeah, in fact, I tried animation again later, and this time 3D animation, and just discovered that I really didn't like doing it.
The idea of what you imagine something is, and then what it actually is. And like falling in love with the idea of it when actually you're supposed to be heading a different direction.
Yeah, and I think part of it is the learning process. Like there are certain things that I might be good at if I could get through the difficult learning process. But if I enjoy the process of learning, I'm more likely to get there. I might have loved being an animation director, but to have to actually do all that work, creating these characters, I just didn't like the work. So I wasn't getting ahead. Like learning banjo, it wasn't work, it was fun because but I was still learning, so that's why I got to where I could play the banjo. Whereas other people, it feels like work. And so they don't, they give it up after a while. Not that they couldn't get good at it, but maybe if there was a teacher making them, a lot of people hate piano when they're a kid, but the instructor just makes them keep doing it till they get good at it and then they like it. Yeah.
I think that's a cool idea that we know the process is not always easy and you have to go through some pain to get where you want to get. And that maybe a little bit of a key of the success of sticking with something is like you're saying, which is enjoying the process part. We can't just be in love with the end result. It has to be the process because the process is actually where we spend all our time.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you a kid that was drawing all the time, or was it something that formed more when you were in college?
No, I was a kid drawing all the time. I think when I was 3 years old, I said I wanted to be an artist. I think a lot of kids say that at 3 years old, and I just never changed my mind. Yeah, been really consistent with that one.
Do you have certain mentors or teachers or people that supported you along the way?
Yeah, I'd say it starts with my parents. They were always really supportive. A lot of parents would say like encouraging their kids from an early age to go into some kind of career that's going to earn a certain amount of money. My parents were never like that. They said, do what you want to do, follow your dreams. I remember my dad especially, because my dad was a musician, not often professionally, but he's a really good musician. I think because of that, he was always really encouraging me to do what I wanted to do creatively and do it without apology or inhibition, just like give it your all. That was my dad's philosophy. I was grateful for that support. I had a lot of great professors in college, too many to name, really. There wasn't one who just grabbed me and said, go in this direction, do this. But I definitely got a lot of encouragement from my professors in college.
I'm more of a self-taught painter drawer. What do you think about what you learned in college and where that took your art versus the idea of figuring it out a little bit by yourself? I know that one's not better than the other. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah. I think everybody is self-taught, even people with master's degrees. You can only learn so much from other people. I think other people can inspire you to find what you're looking for, maybe faster. For me, probably the biggest thing about going to art school was the exposure. Like I was just not really exposed to fine art, as a kid. Like we go to a museum occasionally, but my main connections with art were Saturday morning cartoons, comic books, illustrations. That's what I saw on a daily basis. And I still love all that stuff. I know a lot of people who, after going to grad school, kind of feel like the creativity has been pounded out of them because there was so much emphasis on having a consistent theory of your artwork and justifying it that it took away from the source of creativity. So I don't know that more schooling is always a better thing. I think it's probably great for some people and not great for others. I don't know. I even wonder that when I'm teaching, like, are they really getting that much from me? It's not, I don't think I'm putting wisdom into their heads. I might tell them what's available. I might help them bring a more critical eye to what they're doing. But I kind of do think everyone in the end has to be self-taught, or at least you have to allow yourself to be taught.
I like it. I like that idea of really everyone is self-taught, because it's true. A teacher can share all kinds of things with you, but if you aren't willing to do the process, once again, you didn't get taught. You didn't do it, actively do it.
Yeah. And I remember after I finished college, like I had some friends who went straight to grad school, but I was just like, I want to get as far from this as possible. I wanted to unlearn everything I'd learned and then see what else there was out there to learn outside of school. I don't know. I always thought I might go back, but so far I haven't. Yeah, I'm still learning and unlearning all the time.
I always wondered if one of the benefits of being there or being with a teacher is that, well, one, there might be shortcuts to technique and process that we don't know about. That's handy to know, that might save hours of your life. And the other is meeting other people. And then, like you're saying, exposure, but also teachers are giving you assignments that you wouldn't give yourself. So maybe you'll happen upon something that you wouldn't have if you hadn't been in that situation. And I like that idea.
Yeah, I think you have hit on a lot of things that are so valuable about having a good teacher.
One thing we've talked about through time is this balancing of paying the bills and making art and having a day job and mixing the two and how to kind of pull it off. Sometimes if we put all the focus on, I have to make my total living from painting, it might kill it too, because there's so much pressure on it. But on the other hand, we don't want to have a day job, which sucks all our energy, so we don't make any more. You've
Yeah.
often balanced both of those things. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, I'd say for me lately, I've found a pretty good balance with that. I have been lucky in that I've been able to live on a small enough amount of money that I haven't often had to work full time at a non-art related job. And at different times, I've made more of my income from art than others. In fact, for a few years, that's pretty much all I was doing. I was just a totally self-employed artist. I used to work in about 6 or 7 different series, and some were closer to my heart than others. And the two that were selling were the two I cared the least about. It was landscapes and interiors. Mostly it was the landscapes. And I could have continued with that. I could probably have gone on to a successful career as a landscape painter. I had a few galleries interested in different series I was doing. But in a way, it just came to feel like another job, because it was the narrative work that I was really excited about, but I was painting landscapes kind of to pay for it. And I got out of that when the economy crashed 10 years ago, and then the gallery I was with kind of imploded. I guess I realized that if I was making a living off of doing art that I wasn't really that concerned, didn't feel important to me, it just felt like just another job. And I thought, if I have a job, I might as well get one that pays better. Since then, I've done so many different kinds of work. And right now I have a pretty good balance. Like, I'm able to make enough money to continue to do the artwork I want without giving so much time to work. I'm able to balance the money, work, time pretty well right now. So I think it's a good way to go. And honestly, all the artists I know in New York, who are showing in galleries and things, they all have second jobs, and it's just expected that you'll have to. I remember reading some quotes from, who is it? I think it was advice John Cage gave to Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg, like, work only when you need to. And I think in the 50s, you could do that. You could work 8 hours a week, and that allowed you to have an apartment in a studio in Manhattan, and we just don't live in those times anymore. Yeah. So it's a much harder economy these days than what our parents or grandparents came up with.
It makes me think two things. One is having that part-time work, in your experience, almost as protecting your creative ideas, because it relieved the pressure of the landscape factory situation. The other thought is this connected to the value that society does or doesn't put on artists and art, that you couldn't just make your living with that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. As far as some of my decision making, in a way, I don't want to be totally dependent on artwork for my living, because then if I want to change to something else, like, I got to follow the creativity where it goes. And if it goes into a territory that's not really sellable, then I can't do it. So right now I'm not limited by that. I can, allow the creativity to go wherever it wants. And I do value that freedom, and that's freedom that having income from other sources gives me.
Well, good job finding that balance.
Thanks, Annie Fain. You've been an inspiration to me over the years. We've talked about this stuff, both finding our own ways.
Exactly. And story sharing with people that have similar things going on is so helpful.
You've managed it with 2 children and building a house, and you're still doing your thing.
We have to be so determined. Fight for it. Fight for it.
Yeah, you do. You have to fight for every bit of spare time, whether it's creative time or just time to read a book.
Yeah, exactly. So not every painter is a mural painter. It's like this magical, amazing idea to me to paint outdoors in such a large scale on a wall. Tell us a little bit about how mural painting came to you, and also about one of your more recent projects. How was that financed, and how did that all come together to be possible?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, mural painting is always exciting to me. I think I first fell in love with the idea when I had to go to, I think it was like a federal court building or something in Atlanta. And I think there was some public art there. And I thought, wow, I would love to do a painting in a space like this where people aren't here to see art. Because, if you're in artworks in a gallery or museum, the only people seeing it are people who are there specifically to see art. This is a way to reach people who wouldn't seek out art. And the fact that it wouldn't be sellable, but it's for everybody, it's so democratic. I love this egalitarianism of it. I do think it's a difficult industry to get into if you want to do it like for pay, or even if you want to do it just for fun. It's still difficult because there are a lot of different levels and tiers of how this stuff comes together. I have a mural in Johnson City, Tennessee, and I'll throw this an example out there of just how they're really well done. So they put out a call for artists through email, word of mouth, whatever, and they ask people to send in your portfolio. So what have you done before? They don't ask for a proposal. And then they narrow it down to a few people, maybe 3 to 5, and then they give each of those people some money, and they say, okay, give us a design. And then they choose one of those designs, and then they will have that person paint their mural for them. What's good about that is they're not asking you to work for free. There's kind of a tier below that. A lot of proposals, in the initial call, they say, give us a design. They might even say, give us a full color design. So to make a good design for me takes about 40 hours worth of work. And not only that, it takes 40 hours of work and interviewing people, talking with people in the area, because the mural has to fit its space. So really, like to do a good design, it's just a ridiculous amount of work. It's the hardest part of the whole process. And a lot of organizations want you to do that part for free. And then maybe they'll choose you, maybe not. So I don't even apply for those anymore, but that's probably the most common kind. And also I found that if I say, well, I'll put 8 hours into it and give just kind of a loose sketch, I never hear back. I think unless it's a full color design, you're just not going to hear back. The trouble with those is that first step in when they want to see your portfolio. Unless you already have a kick-ass portfolio with lots of projects just like the one they're doing, you're probably not going to get it. If they have a wall that's 100 feet wide and your biggest mural is 50 feet wide, they're going to look at that and say, well, we don't know that he can paint a 100-foot mural. Honestly, if you can paint something small, you can paint something big. It's not that big of a difference, but they want to see lots of experience just like what you're going to do for them. The hard part there is getting that portfolio in the first place. And the best way to do that is mainly to be really outgoing and talk to lots of people. Go up to building owners and say, hey, can I paint a mural here just to build your portfolio? Maybe they'll pay you, maybe not. Maybe you have a friend who owns a business who wants a mural, and that's a good way to get a foot in. But if you want to get the big projects, like at the city level, your murals need to be at least 50 feet in one direction or not. They want to be really large, outside, durable. And it's difficult to get that kind of experience. Like I said, it helps if you're really extroverted, which I am not, and most artists aren't. But I think for those artists who really do enjoy that part of the process of meeting people and talking their business up and kind of promoting themselves, they have a pretty good shot of building up a pretty good mural portfolio. On top of that, there's the technical things, how to scale something up, how to get the right amount of paint, whether to use a scaffold or a lift. Mainly it's about speed, practices that speed you up, which I think people just figure out over time. And I've seen murals work differently on that process. Some paint the whole thing just finished from one side to the left, one side to the other. Others will start with just base colors and put it on. Yeah. For me, murals are all about speed.
I had 2 more questions about it. Well, 3. One is, do you always have people paint with you? So you're not the only one painting. The other question is, how does it feel to see your painting on a wall? And the third is, your most recent one was in Asheville, right? And there was a story around how that happened.
Yeah. Not my most recent, but a pretty recent one. It does feel good to see my work on a wall, or also to see, now the Instagram is around, people tagging themselves, taking pictures in front of it. I love that. One of the best things is I've done some murals that were based on other people's drawings, like kids' artwork at schools. And to see the kid walk by and say, hey, I drew that, that's my cowboy, or that's my dinosaur up there in the mural. That makes me really happy. Happier than seeing something that I designed is seeing that it matters to them and they feel like it's theirs. Because I have done some projects where people help me paint. Usually that's not the case, either because of like insurance liability issues, or if it's kids, can't have kids on a ladder. The one I did last year was a volunteer project. When the pandemic started, I just thought it would be nice to paint a mural to honor healthcare workers and essential workers in general. So I started reaching out to people. Like, I just found walls that I thought would be good for murals, tried to track down who owns the building. That avenue didn't really take me anywhere, but I did have a connection. I just reached out to this woman who just really knows how to get things done. I asked her if she knew of any walls, and she said, oh, let me look into it, and emailed me back. I swear, 2 hours later. Said, okay, Habitat for Humanity owns a building right by the hospital. The building's been vacant for 10 years. They're willing to board it up and prime it, and you can paint a mural there. It's like, wow, that was great. I really talked to the right person. So she did some fundraising to raise money for the paint. We both reached out to volunteers to help paint. This was height of the pandemic, and so we had to keep everyone socially distanced, and we didn't have a permit to block the sidewalk, so we had to keep our numbers low, but it was still fun to get a bunch of people out there to paint it. I designed it, helped prime the wall, drew it on there, and then people just came out with their brushes, and we got the whole thing done in a day and a half, that was a lot of fun. Yeah. I'd love to do more projects like that where have people out there helping out. They really liked it. And I'm sure, every time they drive by, they look at it, they don't think, that's Ian's mural. They think that's my mural, and that's what I want. I want everyone to feel like they own it. I want the people who work at the hospital to feel like it's theirs. To me, that's the joy in public art.
That's so different from painting by yourself in your studio. It's like, yeah, one balances the other, kind of, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think I would want to do just one or the other.
What place does nature and travel and playing instruments and everything have in your creative life, would you say?
I'd say pretty central, definitely nature and travel. I've had a wonderful spring. I basically caught up on travel to see people that I missed during the pandemic, and also tag on as much nature time as I can. So Catherine and I went to see a couple friends in Portland, Oregon. And because I have a flexible schedule, I have myself fly out a week early and then went up to Olympic National Park for a week-long backpacking trip by myself. The last few years, I've been doing solo trips, either backpacking or just camping, and a lot of hiking. I can't even explain how rejuvenating those experiences have been. It's weird to say that some of the highlights of my last few years have been time spent by myself, but it has been the case. Not that I don't want people with me. It's just kind of worked out that way. I would say I get a lot of ideas when I'm out in the woods. A novel I wrote came to me almost entirely on a backpacking trip. Not only that, but a lot of the artwork I do is about ecology and environmental issues. And I think you can only learn so much of that and get a feel for that so much from just reading articles. You kind of got to get out there. Both the last 2 years, I've gone to Mount Rainier and gone up to the face of melting glaciers. So, I've seen big chunks of ice falling off. I've seen the water just pouring off like the glacier was crying. And you don't get that experience just from reading climate reports about the state of the world, especially if you want to engage with it emotionally or bring any of that emotion to artwork. You got to get out there and see it in person. And there's just so much I wouldn't know about if I hadn't visited these places. So yeah, I guess for me, it's kind of a rejuvenation and inspiration, and also just gathering more information about the world to put into my artwork. What would I make my artwork about if I hadn't been to these places? I don't know.
And you're also doing photography on these trips.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of cool. I have designed a few friends' album covers, including Jero's, and a lot of that was based on photography, pictures I took while traveling. I don't consider myself a photographer, but it is kind of cool that there are some people who think I'm a photographer because they like the pictures I've put online. So that's pretty cool. For me, they're just snapshots, but it is really important to me.
And your sense of color and design and line that you use in your paintings transfer to what you're seeing through the lens. So who or what is filling up your inspiration cup these days?
I kind of just answered that because it's these trips I've been on, especially the trips to Mount Rainier and the Olympic Peninsula. Because whenever I travel somewhere, I also try to immerse myself in the place as much as I can. I read about it. Either I'll take a book of mythology from the region. So in the US, it would be American Indian stories, or just natural history or the history of the place. That is a big inspiration to me. Another one that's just kind of constant is just checking out other artwork. I went to the art museum in Portland. That's kind of what I do whenever I travel somewhere. Like, I land in a big city, go to the art museum, and then get out. I don't really like cities that much, but that's where most of the great art is. So yeah, I love art and nature. I can't think of one particular artist I could say that has really inspired me, but there are a lot of them. I tend to like painters who paint really loosely because they inspire me to try to loosen up some more. Because that's my thing. I think my artwork's always too tight, too labored. Yeah, I saw a great piece by Marcel Zama in Portland. It was a sculptural piece that was pretty powerful. And I've been looking at a lot of Kerry James Marshall paintings. I think his are acrylic, but a lot of them are large scale and just really beautifully painted and messy, like the messy stuff.
That's interesting that you notice yourself drawn to looking at and being around things that are different than what you're doing because you want to be more that way.
Yeah, that's how I work. I guess everyone does that.
I think we probably do that in relationships too, but that's a whole nother topic.
That is, I'm not even going to follow up with that because that's a huge one. But yeah, I think an important thing for any person in a relationship or an artwork, I'll give the example for artwork, is like, okay, I love this thing. Do I love it because I want to do something like this? Or do I just love it? Because if you try to do everything that you love, you're going to go in a million directions. And maybe out of that, you'll synthesize something eventually that is your own. But you can also just, oh, I like this person's art, so I'm going to do that this week. And then next week over here, you can drive yourself crazy with that. Eventually, you got to learn at some point, like, okay, I love that, and I'm not doing anything like it.
Do you have any last words of support for anyone out there trying to make and do, even though it's hard?
Yeah, I would say just keep doing it. That's kind of what I've taken lately, especially around oil painting, because it takes a while to master. Do you ever really master anything? But I'd say just keep up the craft. Like, even if you're just painting apples every day, keep doing it. You're getting better at it, and you're finding something that will draw you through it. Whatever you're doing, if it continues to interest you, keep it up. Don't let the thoughts around it, like the questions of why am I doing this? Is this worth it? Is this a waste of time? None of that is coming from the creative part of your mind. That's coming from the critical part. And that critical part usually doesn't have anything successful to add. The way I see it, it's a mindset I've taken from my Zen meditation group, is that there is a part of your mind that wants to sabotage you, wants you to be unhappy, wants you to stop doing anything that feeds you. And that's the critical mind. And it really doesn't have a positive part to play in the creative process. You've got to learn to shut that out. And often that'll sound like the voices of other people criticizing you, in your own head. And you just got to shut that out and keep doing it. If you get to where you're not enjoying it anymore, stop and move on to something else. I really think there is something to that idea of follow your bliss. That is kind of a Joseph Campbell quote that's maybe overquoted and easily misunderstood. But I do think that if you're getting a lot of joy from it, keep doing it.
It's like it boils down to trust yourself.
Yeah.
The gut feeling versus the critical mind. Trust the gut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know so many people who want to do something creative, but they get so afraid that they're not going to be good at it that they stop doing it, and they never reach that point where there's something to show. It's sadly too common.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you were able to talk to me today and open to talking to me today.
It's been a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Annie Fain.
If you would like to be in touch or have someone you would love to hear interviewed, email me at afainhouse@gmail.com. I also hope that you're inspired to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. New episodes come out every other Tuesday. If you would like to watch these interviews in video form and are curious about the happenings of my little business called Fain House, where I paint and make art prints and gift cards from my watercolor originals, I'd love for you to sign up for my email list. When you do, you get a coupon for 10% off a one-time purchase in my Etsy shop and first dibs on my annual limited edition calendar printing. You will also be granted access to our free private Facebook group, which is the one spot you can watch these interviews. If this all sounds fun to you, go to your web browser and type bit.ly/Fainhouse to sign up. That's with a capital F and a capital H in Fain House. This is not a weekly newsletter, but rather a list of folks who are interested in hearing from me time to time. You can find this link, as well as links for each person I interview, in the show notes of each episode. I'm Annie Fain Barrelon. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll leave you with a quote for the day. Climb the mountains and get their good tidings. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees. The winds will blow their own freshness into you, and the storms their energy, while cares will drip off like autumn leaves. John Muir.